Welcome back. In this section I'm going to show you how to do the small antler. So as you can see, this is the small antler mold, and this makes an adorable set of antlers. So obviously these would be suitable. You can see this is basically like a 4-inch 10 centimeter circle, so like on a cookie, you know, so you're going to do like a 10 centimeter 4-inch cookie. You can also do these obviously on use these on other sort of different sort of pastries, you know, like cupcake toppers and things like that. And the nice thing about this is, just like the big one, you can actually cut this down to make it smaller. So if you wanted the antlers to be this size, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, first of all, paste. I found that because this is a smaller mold, just like I would use in things like my acorns and some of my smaller elements on filler flowers and things, I prefer to just use straight flower paste, petal paste, gum paste. All right. So I'm just using here the flower modeling paste, white, and I just add a little bit of gray to this. Remember, just like the large antlers, you could totally, of course, use obviously homemade paste, but also you could, of course, change the color as well. We could make these in a creamy color, but I found, generally speaking, just this pale gray, as you'll see when I show you the coloring, you can use that and then obviously put brown on top of that, or cream colors as well. So, but of course, totally you could make these in white, or of course you could do them in a creamy color as well. Now, when we make the antler, if you're wanting to wire the antler, so just like I did on the big one, I would use a 24 gauge wire, okay, because I'm going to show you how to do this on one. So just like we did on the large one, you put your wire in there and you bend it to the shape of the mold, you see? So then that would give you your wire. And of course you could make these three-dimensional, but generally on a smaller antler like this would be perfectly acceptable to use just as a half relief antler. Obviously this is the front of it in an arrangement of flowers, or of course use this in a wide arrangement, or and in air drying clay, of course, for household things as well. So when we use this, so this is, as I said, the flower modeling paste. So I'm actually going to use a number 10 small here. So there's going to be a number 10 on the size guide that wants to just go through the hole. All right, so number 10 just goes through the hole. We're going to condition this with just a little tiny bit of vegetable shortening. And we're also going to just take a little tiny bit of vegetable shortening and vegetable fat and just put into the mold. Okay, and you could do this with a brush. All right, now if you are going to use a brush for this, you would keep a brush just for this purpose. All right, so maybe we'll put some tape around there with a label maker, just put on there that it would have fat brush or shortening brush, because obviously the bristles will then get have the oil in them. So then if you use that same brush, even washing it for making dusty and flowers, it's going to smudge. So, but as I said, you just use your finger like I'm doing here. And then we're going to take this, so we're going to just roll this. So once you condition it, just going to roll this into a little sausage. Now this is a little bit more basic as far as like how I'm putting it into the mold. I'm just going to make this into a sausage, basically the length of the mold, sort of like this. All right, like so. I'm going to just dust that with a little, so although we have the vegetable fat or shortening into there, I'm still using a little bit of cornstarch because it just sort of helps to release in addition. So again, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to just sort of just press this into the mold like this, and I'm going to actually just use my rolling pin. I'm just going to just roll across the top of this. So you see what it's going to do is going to sort of help to push it in, and then you're just going to just take, you're now just going to just press this in with your Dresden tool like this. All right, you see if you have any little areas, you can just bring from here, just push this into the mold, because we want this to sort of be filled level. So just fill this in. You can take then your cosmetic sponge, just going to press this in. And again, using your little scraper, all right, or your, just with a little scraper here, or as I said, we can use also your little knife here as well. This also works well, just to trim off your, you see how you can just use that, and that just sort of trims off. So you just skim off the top of the mold with a little knife or a little scraper. Remember, don't use anything sharp like a kitchen knife, because you can destroy the mold. Just going to press this down. Now, if you're going to put the wire in there, you would do this just exactly the same way as we did the large one. Put a little bit of the softened sugar paste, the gray sugar paste, onto there. Put that into the mold and then just embed it into there. Just press it in with the cosmetic sponge. You see, and then when it comes out, obviously it's going to be wired, and then you dry it and you'd have it wired. I'm going to show this pair, obviously, this is an unwired pair. And when you're doing this, you'll see how this has got obviously to accommodate the wire. So you can just pull that out while it's in the mold, or you can take it off when it comes out. So then we're going to now just turn this over, all right? I'm just going to just peel the paste so you see how the mold's released like this, all right? And you can use, something I use quite a lot is like a little scraper like this. You see how, and it's just holding, it just holds the pieces while, so you don't stretch them too much. Now, just like before, if you have, sometimes you'll have a little tiny bit of a skin that's just like a membrane, it's just the top. You can actually remove this. The little companion tool is wonderful for this. All right, we're going to just take off that little part here, which is where the wire is, because we just want to have, if you're not going to wire these. Okay, let's take this off. And of course, that will give you your antlers, and then you would generally put them, this is a little silicone mat, just put them on there. If you want to make a matching pair, just obviously match them up. You can also use like fun foam, craft foam, and just sort of dry them in pairs, all right? Now, if you wanted to make this smaller, so for example, let's say you wanted to make a smaller antler here, just like I showed you on the large antler, you cut at an angle, okay? So what you do here is you cut it at an angle, like that. And then you see what you can actually do. This one has, rather than having a separate mold, it has the end piece on there. So what you can actually do there is just going to skim that off. And you're going to take just a little bit of your, I said, piping gel or glue or your softened paste. Just a little bit of that on there. And then you can just take that little piece there. And you can actually then realign that onto the end there like that. You see? So of course you could take these to whatever size you wanted to. And sort of delightful to use, as I said, for a smaller application, plus also on the side of a smaller cake as well, because like on a side of a small cake, you could put these on the side, and again, you could put a monogram, a letter in the middle of this. And of course, again, just like I showed on the full antlers, half antlers, you could dry these on a cake dummy. So if you are going to be doing these, or even on like the cake tin, but a dummy is easy because you can then stick the pins in there. So just get a dummy the same size as the cake is going to be and just dry them, and then of course then they would dry in the natural curve. It's not so noticeable on a small antler like this, because if you're putting that onto a curved surface, it's not going to have a lot of raised part, but as I said, it does make it look sort of more flush to the cake surface. And then again, just use your pins there. So this is the small antler. You can see the wired one here, so really cute. And I mean, you can even use this as coral. I mean, this could be done if you did it in a red or a corally color. You could even use this sort of coral pieces. You could use it, as I said, for sort of fantasy style cakes as well. But as I said, here is the small antler. And when I come back, I'm going to show you how we color and finish these off. So now we're going to move on to the fun part, which is going to be the coloring. Now this is the three-dimensional antler, obviously, that I added the section at the bottom to. So once that is dry, what I'm going to do is going to take 2 extra 18 gauge wires, and there actually should be room to get at least one of those into the hole, and the second one will just be added to there, just going to give stability to the antler. Okay, and then you're going to take either some gray or some brown floral tape, all right, half width usually, and all we're going to do then is just going to tape this together here. So you're just going to go around with your floral tape. You could just sort of push this up to the bottom of the antler here, like so, and just tape down like this. All right. Now, of course, this is quite heavy, but add in the extra wires to this. Just make sure, as I said, and then you're just going to do this with the antler in an upside down position. So this is a project just like the sunflower and some of the other larger flower projects that you do over really a couple of day period. And of course, but using your food dehydrator is going to help a lot if you do have one. And also sometimes people, if you even put the oven on very low, so lowest setting on your oven, and then of course with things like the antlers, you can actually hang those in the on the oven rack. So you see, you're just going to tape down here as far as you want to go. All right, so just going to tape down with your wire here. And of course, you're going to include this into, like for example, into a spray. And of course, then you can just finish this off and just cut this to the. Cut through with my hook. Wire cutters there. There we go. All right, and you see that's going to give your antler, as I said, the more stability on there. This one's still a little tiny bit soft, so you know, really as I make sure that's totally dry before you would attempt this next step. Now, as far as like when we do coloring on the antlers, there's two ways to do this. On this one here, I did this with dry powder, okay? And this is sort of the tonal color, obviously with the gray back, and I'm going to use some gray color and a little bit of brown onto here. So I'm going to show you that first. So what we're going to do here is going to take your powder here, and then I'm going to start off with a sort of a pale brown. So this is like a chocolate brown, which I've used on the sunflower and things before. And here I'm using just a sort of with the cornstarch or corn flour added to it, just to make a lighter brown. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take that lighter color, and then what I would do here is with my antler here, I'm just going to sort of just rub this over just sort of gently. So you see I'm using a large brush here, but I'm just going to do this sort of fairly gently over the surface. All right. So you just do this. And basically what you do is you're going to do this all over. I'm just going to show you a little part of this, but you're just going to get this sort of base color onto here. Okay. Then you would take some of the gray. So this is a sort of like a gray color, which is obviously a nice color to use as well. And then you're going to just put the gray on the tips. So you see how the gray will really sort of like blend nicely onto the, because you've got a gray background, this is really a perfect complement to the, and of course you would do this all over. Okay, so you can sort of see that you've got the coloring on there, but you see like the gray is just onto the tips here. Okay, and then once you've done the gray onto the tips, the next thing would be done. You can use the same brush throughout. I mean, if you're doing two antlers as well, go ahead and do the base color, the pale chocolate on both of them, and then the gray color. And then you're going to finish that off with some chocolate. So this is just chocolate here. Again, just going to work this onto a napkin or onto there. And you see then when you rub over the top of here, when you go over the top with this darker chocolate, what it's going to be, it's a little bit like when we do a wood rubbing, but you see how it's going to pick up all of that beautiful detail, incredible detail on the mold, you see? So you're just going to just, as I said, and of course this would be done just showing you really the top of this, just to give you an idea of the color. All right, but you see how the darker chocolate will just pick up that detail onto there like so. But as I explained previously, you know, you've got lots of options there as far as sort of the coloring goes. So on, you know, like obviously a small one as well, you know, you could do the same sort of brown color here. Of course, the small ones are quick to dust, and then just a little bit of gray just onto the tips. Like that. A little bit of brown, pale brown around here. And then you're going to put the darker chocolate, just going to go over the top. That will just sort of pick up the detail on the antler. Okay, so same sort of tonal color, just done on the small one. So that is with dust, and of course you've got many options as far as like with browns and different colors to use. And then you can also, you can paint. So we can actually paint the antlers. So these ones have been painted with some gel color. All right, these ones have been done with some metallic and sort of metallic paint, or basically metallic paint. Now, in modern interior design, a lot of antlers are used now in white. So you often see, for example, like white painted antlers. People paint them pastel colors. So especially for those of you working in craft application for sort of home decor, like for example, doing the antlers in gray and then doing silver on them. And so you can use obviously bronze in like silver and bronze sort of dusts and things on them. You could use spray paint on them for interior. Now, as far as in sugar, all right, these are obviously all sugar ones. So first option we have would be to sort of paint them. So this one here is actually sort of, I've done a little bit of painting on here. So what I've done there is I've just used like just a cream color, so just like a creamy color gel, and then I'm going to use some vodka. So I'm going to take a little bit of vodka here. I'm going to put some of that onto the top because the alcohol will evaporate quickly. All right, and so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to just take a little bit of the brown color here. You see, I'm just going to go over the top of this with just a wash, and I've done this sort of over with a very pale version, and I'm going to just do slightly darker version on here. You see, I've just gone. So you see, this changes the tonal color of the antler incredibly, you know. So, but you see, it's still gray when I made it. It was still gray. All right, and then I'm going to take a little bit of chocolate brown. So this is going to be just a little bit of brown here. I'm just going to mix a little bit of brown into there. And again, you can just put the brown just onto the tips. So see, I can just go down with the brown on the tips here. And then I can just go over the surface just lightly. You see how this is going to again pick up the detail of the, so if you were going more for a sort of a brown palette, you know, you could use this sort of color. The other thing you can also do is you could paint this like the base color, the creamy color, let it dry, and then you can actually then, once it's dry, you could go in with brown dust. So you could either do it all painted, or it could actually be done with, as I said, a combination of painting and dusting once the paint's dry. You see how that sort of builds up your brown colors, okay? So you've got those sort of color palette. And then this one here I did just more in a chocolate. So you see I just did that in a chocolate brown color here. Now for the metallic ones, what I do there is just take actually a metallic dust. So you're just going to take a piece of parchment paper or wax paper to work on. And I'm going to take and then what I actually did here is I used, so for example, like this one is like a rose gold. So that's of course a very popular trend color. So this is of course like a food dust, but you can of course those used in craft. You can use bronzing, like gilding waxes and things like that. But what I do is when I do this onto sugar, I actually just take a brush here and I'm going to take just a little bit of vegetable fat, vegetable shortening. I would just work a little bit of that and a little bit of the powder. So I'm actually just using like just a little bit of vegetable fat, a little tiny bit, and then the bronze or the gold or the silver. You see, then when you go over the top of that, what it actually does is sort of builds up the highlights. So you're just going to just brush over the top. And then you leave this 2 or 3 hours and this will dry, all right? And but as I said, you get this sort of beautiful bronzing on here. So, you know, especially like rose gold is a very hot trend color at the moment. So this, of course, would look stunning. You can also do your, like this one here I've done with the silver, and what I did there is I used it very lightly over the surface, so really most of the gray is still visible. The silver is just catching the highlights, all right? So if you were doing a more contemporary style wedding cake with maybe white and silver, you know, the antlers would be a very nice sort of natural element to add to that. And then of course you can also paint, like these are some like metallic paints. So you could paint, these come also in silver and gold as well. So you can paint those on. These are totally edible as well. So of course you have your craft application, which would be your gilding waxes and obviously metallic dust. And then of course for food, you need to make sure you're using an edible product, okay? But that gives you that. And you can see here the sort of the black one. So again, if you're going for like a black and white wedding cake, you could of course do like black antlers or black and white and red, which would look stunning. Now, when you have got if you're doing the antlers with dust, okay, so if you're going to actually do the antlers with dust, what I normally would then do is once they are dry, so once the antler is finished, all right, so obviously I'm going to finish this one off in a little while. Once you finished it, you're going to lightly steam it, and what that's going to do is that is going to set the color. All right, so we're going to set the color onto this, and this is a little clothes steamer, which you see me use a lot in Flower Pro. When you're doing the painted ones, just let those dry. And usually you don't have to, of course, on the metallics, they're already shiny. But on the painted ones, naturally when you paint something, it's going to give you a little bit of a shine anyway. But if you do, once it's paint dried, if you want a little bit of a more high gloss on it, you can glaze it with a spray lacquer. But when you're doing these ones here, I'm just going to just lightly steam the small, I'm just going to show you the small one here. But this would be the same as I did when I did the big one. So I just put the large one through the steam, and then what I would do then is just going to give it its natural shine. I'm going to just take and I'm just going to just lightly spray this with some spray lacquer, okay? And remember the spray lacquer, you're just going to this is a food grade lacquer, all right? So just going to spray this just lightly onto the antler, and what that's going to do is going to give you, see, this nice natural sort of shine on it, which really antlers have. If you don't have that, alternatively, you could actually take some vegetable shortening. You can put some vegetable shortening just on a brush and just rub it just a little tiny bit over the surface. That will also give you this shine. And of course, for craft application, you can use any of the different types of craft lacquers you have and glazes and spray lacquers you can buy. But as I said, for cake, you know, usually a spray lacquer, or you can also brush that on. And you see that what it will actually help by steaming it, you're going to obviously give you that more muted look. And then when you lacquer it, you're going to get this nice shine to the antler. So that's basically how we would color the antlers. And so obviously an incredible mold, which you can use in so many different ways. For rustic cakes, you can use it in more contemporary style cakes, doing them in black, in silver, in red, in all sorts of fun colors. And obviously you can also use this, as I said, for like a coral, like the small one could be used for like a coral type or in a fantasy cake or an under the sea cake. So I hope you will have a lot of fun using my new Flower Pro Antler and small Antler mold. And I'll see you real soon. So this has been Nicholas Lodge. Sweet wishes until we see you again.